3 years, 847 rows of daily data. One man's system followed with the kind of precision that should embarrass me but doesn't. Because at the time, I believed it the way you believe a doctor who hands you a prescription and says, "Take this, you'll get better." The 5 a.m. alarms. The journaling. The cold exposure every morning in a shower I hated in an apartment I could barely afford. The 90-minute deep work block before checking email. The restructured finances. I even cut people from my life. Actual relationships. People I cared about. Because the book called them low-value connections. I tracked everything: sleep time, wake time, work output, savings rate, skill hours, networking contacts per week. 847 rows. And the results were fine. Not zero. Not a disaster. Fine. Slightly more disciplined. A bit more organized. But the compound explosion the book promised, the results that feel slow and then feel sudden, never showed up. The curve was linear, slight, steady, barely worth measuring linear. And at 2:17 a.m. on a Wednesday in March, I asked the question I'd been dodging for 18 months. What if the advice is correct but the prescription is incomplete? And what if the missing parts were the parts that actually mattered? I didn't find the answer in a study. I found it in an interview, 47 minutes into a long-form podcast. I remember the timestamp because I went back to it 4 times. The host asked, "What was your financial situation when you started?" And the millionaire said, almost between 2 bigger points like it barely mattered, "Well, my wife was working full-time, so we had a safety net, and my parents lent me about $40,000 to get the first inventory order." Then he kept talking about discipline, mindset, waking up early, the $40,000 and the employed spouse, the 2 conditions that removed the survival pressure that makes the first 18 months of any business a psychological death march, were a parenthetical, a footnote between the chapters about cold showers. He wasn't hiding them. He'd forgotten their weight. Because in his story about why he succeeded, the discipline was the protagonist. The $40,000 and the safety net were extras who wandered off the set. The moment I found that timestamp, I wasn't at a desk. I was sitting on my kitchen floor at 2 a.m. with my laptop balanced on my knees because I'd been pacing, a 14-step circuit between the fridge and the living room, for 20 minutes, and my legs gave out. Calves shaking, listening on 1.5 speed, rewinding the same section. 40,000 from my parents. Rewind. 40,000 from my parents. Each time, another piece of the spreadsheet recalculated. The 18-month timeline to profitability. He had $40,000 of runway I didn't have. The Bet Everything chapter. He had a wife earning $95,000 a year while he bet. His first 3 clients came from an MBA alumni Slack channel he mentioned once in a Q&A I found at 3:15 a.m. I sat on that kitchen floor with my calves cramping and realized I hadn't failed his system. His system had never existed. What existed was a story about a system, told by a man who believed it completely, because his brain did what every brain does. Turned a recovery into a prescription and edited out the ingredients that didn't fit the narrative. This video isn't an attack. The most dangerous advice in the world isn't from people who failed. It's from people who succeeded and don't know why. I built 3 diagnostic tools after that night. The first autopsies the prescription. The second X-rays for hidden variables. The third finds the counter cases that reveal the real active ingredient. But before any of that, the engine underneath, the thing that makes the whole machine break. Here's what happens inside the brain of every person who succeeds. The brain receives the outcome and immediately starts constructing the story of why. Not the analysis, the story. And stories need a protagonist who did something, a turning point that was chosen, a moral that can be replicated. So the brain builds backward from the result and picks the elements that fit, the habit, the mindset, the discipline. Those become the active ingredients. The stuff that doesn't fit, conditions already in place, timing you didn't control, access you didn't earn, gets demoted to wallpaper, background, set dressing, I call it outcome authorship bias. The brain's automatic claim of authorship over an outcome that was co-written by variables the author can't see. And it's not a millionaire problem. It's a human problem. The cancer survivor who credits the diet change, not the specific genetic marker that made her tumor respond to chemo. The athlete who credits the training, not the bone density and hormonal profile he was born with. Same pattern every time. The survivor is sincere, the advice is real, and the prescription was written from a narrative that deleted the active ingredient and promoted the cofactor to headline. You've done this yourself. Think about the last time someone asked for directions somewhere you know well. You probably said, go straight on Main, left at the gas station, third building on the right. Clean and confident. But here's what you left out. You know to turn left because you turned right the first time and hit a dead end. Spent 10 confused minutes in the wrong lobby of the second building before figuring out it's the third, and you take Main because someone told you the shortcut through Oak Street saves time. It added 20. Your directions are a survival narrative, the clean version of a messy, wrong-turn-heavy experience. Not because you're lying, because directions don't include drafts. That's millionaire advice. Directions from someone who forgot their own wrong turns. And here's why that matters for you specifically. Every time you read a millionaire's book, watch their keynote, listen to their podcast, you're swallowing a prescription. Do what I did. Get what I got. Delivered with total sincerity, and missing the active ingredient because the prescriber's own brain removed it during story construction. You're not following a liar. You're following a patient who survived, believes they know which medicine cured them, and is writing prescriptions from a memory built for narrative coherence, not pharmacological accuracy. Okay. The tools. You don't need to throw out millionaire advice. You need to autopsy it. The story says, I woke up at 5 a.m. and built a business in 18 months. The autopsy asks, what was already true about this person's situation that made those hours convert into income? And which of those conditions do I share? 3 categories. Active ingredient test. Would this behavior produce a similar result for someone with different starting conditions? If the advice is, invest 20% of your income, does that compound regardless of debt load, safety net, and income level? If yes, active ingredient. If the honest answer is, only if you have no high-interest debt and a 3-month emergency fund, it's a cofactor. The advisor presents it as universal. The pharmacology says it's conditional. That gap is where 3-year experiments go to die. Cofactor test. Did this behavior work only because of conditions the advisor already had? I cold called 50 clients a day is real effort. But did it convert because of the calls, or because the advisor's father-in-law was a partner at the firm that became the first client, giving the credibility that made calls 2 through 50 viable? The calls are the cofactor. The father-in-law is the active ingredient. The book never mentions the father-in-law. Narrative artifact test. Is this in the advice because it caused the outcome, or because it makes the story better? The 5 a.m. alarm, the cold shower, the gratitude journal. These appear in nearly every millionaire framework. Tech founders, real estate investors, fitness influencers, hedge fund managers. If the same prescription appears across completely different domains and mechanisms, that shared element isn't the cause, it's a narrative artifact. Waking up at 5 a.m. didn't build the tech company. But I wake up at 5 a.m. is a way better story beat than I built a product that matched a market need during a 14-month window when 3 competitors had just exited. One is a prescription, the other is a weather report. The brain keeps the prescription, discards the weather. After those 3 questions, you know what you're looking at. Active ingredients you can use. Cofactors you need to verify. Narrative artifacts you can drop. You're not cynical now. You're literate, a pharmacist reading the prescription instead of a patient swallowing it blind. If this is clicking, if you're starting to see the variables that were never in the book, hit the like. Not for me, because it helps other people stuck in that same shame spiral find this before another "you didn't want it enough" video finds them first. Now, Where are the missing pieces hiding? Turns out, it's weirdly predictable. Outcome authorship. Bias always deletes the same variables. 14 books, over 40 podcast interviews, 8 keynotes I dissected after that kitchen floor night. Same 5 categories every time. The brain keeps what was chosen and removes what was given. Choices make good stories. Gifts don't. So here's where to look. The financial safety net. During the highest risk phase, first 12 to 24 months, what was this person's downside protection? A spouse with income, family money, savings that meant failure didn't mean homelessness. The millionaire who says, "I bet everything," while his wife earned $95,000 a year, didn't bet everything. He bet his half. And the gap between betting everything and betting half, when the bet takes 18 months, is the gap between heroic risk and cushioned experimentation. Network access. How did the first 3 clients or investors arrive? Cold outreach or pre-existing relationship? The MBA classmate? The former colleague? The family friend who made the introduction? Success stories reframe this as hustle. The record shows the first critical doors were opened by proximity, not effort. The networking that followed was real, built on a foundation of access that preceded it. Timing and market window, with the exact same strategy executed 3 years earlier or later, have produced the same result. Someone who started e-commerce in 2012, YouTube in 2016, crypto in 2017, remote consulting in 2020, they walked through a door that was open when they arrived and closed behind them. The advice is a prescription based on weather that is already changed, starting capital, financial, and social. What did this person have at day 0 that they didn't earn during the period they describe? The $40,000 loan, sure, but also the dinner table conversations about business at age 14, parents who modeled entrepreneurship, the absorbed assumption that building something was normal, not a terrifying leap from safety. Financial capital sometimes makes the footnotes. Social capital never shows up at all. Geographic and structural advantage. Would this strategy have worked from a different location, with different infrastructure? The person who started from nothing in a city with small business loans, reliable internet, proximity to talent, and access to the right industry. They don't experience it as an advantage because they've never tried without it. Run all 5 on any success story. 3 minutes. The pattern always emerges. The story credits the discipline. The X-ray reveals the foundation the discipline was built on. And the prescription, "Be disciplined like me," is an instruction to build the house without mentioning the ground. Now the third tool, the reverse testimonial, the one that makes this permanent. Every Millionaire's book has testimonials from followers who thrived. Those are the least useful data. The useful data is the people who followed the same advice, with the same discipline, for the same duration, and got different results. Not the quitters, the people who did everything right and it didn't work. Those people are the control group, and the control group is where the real pharmacology lives. Find them. Reddit threads, forums, comment sections of the Millionaire's own content. Look for posts that say, "I've been doing this for 2 years, and here are my actual results." These people exist in large numbers underneath every success system. And they're rarely vocal, because the framework taught them that failure means they didn't execute hard enough. Speaking up feels like confessing weakness, not reporting data. Take 3 to 5. Map the delta, not the effort that's controlled for. Compare starting conditions. Safety net, network, timing, capital. The variables that differ between the success group and the failure group, while the prescription stayed constant, those are the actual active ingredient, the ones the book left out. Then rewrite the prescription honestly. Not, "Wake up at 5 a.m. Instead, if you have 12+ months of expenses covered, network access in your target industry, and a market with a current growth window, then the early morning work block has a real shot at compounding into something viable. If you don't have those conditions, the same routine will build skills and discipline, but the income inflection described in the book is unlikely to arrive, less inspiring. also accurate. Think about a plane crash. 100 passengers. 97 die, 3 survive. Investigators don't interview the survivors to understand the crash. They study the black box, the recorder that captured what happened without the filter of human memory. The survivors say, "I braced like this, I stayed calm, I moved toward the exit." All sincere, but the investigators know something the survivors can't. The 3 who lived may have done the exact same things as the 97 who didn't. The variable wasn't behavior. It was seat position, which section of the fuselage held together, which rows were near an unblocked exit. Survivors credit their actions. The black box credits the seat. A survival manual from testimony would be sincere, well-meaning, and useless because the active ingredient was never the behavior. It was the conditions. That is millionaire advice. You've been reading survivor testimony. These 3 tools are your black box. You walked into this video carrying shame, the quiet kind. From doing what you were told, following the prescription with real faith, and not getting the result. And in that gap, you did what the framework taught. You blamed yourself, not disciplined enough, didn't want it enough. Here's the diagnosis. You were never the defective patient. The prescription was incomplete. The active ingredient was never in the bottle. Not because the millionaire hid it, because his own brain, running the same outcome authorship bias every human brain runs, edited it out and promoted the disciplined star of the show. He told you to take the sugar pill because he believes the sugar pill cured him. When you took it and nothing happened, you decided you were broken. You weren't broken. The pharmacology was broken. So here's the one question that would have saved me 3 years and 847 rows. Before following any successful person's advice, ask, what was true about your situation before you started doing what you're advising me to do? Not what you did. What was already true? What safety net? What access? What market condition? What capital was already loaded before the discipline began? If the advisor can't answer, or the answer reveals conditions you don't share, you're not looking at a prescription. You're looking at a survivor's narrative dressed as medicine. Read the label, not the testimonial. The next book will come. The next millionaire will stand on a stage and say, "Here's what I did, and you can do it too." The audience will lean forward, ready to believe the distance is measured in discipline and 5 a.m. alarms. It isn't. The distance is measured in hidden variables, and the person on stage can't see them because their brain archived the safety net, the timing, the network, and the $40,000 under background while promoting the cold showers to cause. You are no longer that audience. The millionaire didn't lie to you. His brain lied to him first, the same way every brain lies to every survivor, rewriting the pharmacology of their recovery into a story where the choices were the medicine and the conditions were scenery. You followed a prescription missing the active ingredient, not because you weren't paying attention, because the prescriber's own memory had already removed it, filed under background, archived under circumstances, deleted from the chapter where the morning routine became the hero. The shame you've been carrying, that quiet math of, "I did what they said, and it didn't work, so the problem is me," isn't yours. It belongs to a cognitive distortion that lives inside every brain that ever succeeded and tried to explain why. They can't see the active ingredient. They never could. And you can't follow a prescription that was never written. Stop blaming the patient. Start reading the label. The medicine was never in the book. It was in the conditions the book forgot to mention. Tell me which hidden variable you found when you ran the X-ray. The safety net I didn't have. The network that was handed, not built. The timing window that closed before I got there. The starting capital that was a parenthetical in the podcast and foundational in the outcome. Name it, because the moment you see the deleted ingredient, you stop filling prescriptions from stories and start reading the pharmacology. That's the day the shame lifts. Not because you succeeded, because you finally understood why the prescription couldn't work, and it was never about you. Subscribe for more content that autopsies the invisible pharmacology behind success advice. Not to tear down people who made it, but to give you the diagnostic literacy to separate what actually works from what only sounds like it works. Because the person telling you survived.